Good evening, and you're very welcome to another episode of the League of Ireland Women's podcast here on finalwhistle.ie with myself, Breffney Early, and of course, as always, Aaron Clark joins us for, I think it's episode 29 of season 5 here on the podcast. Aaron, lots to talk about. It's FAI Cup final almost. Pairings decided after the weekend semi-finals. Treaty United bowed out after a gallant run to the semi-final. They got beaten 2-0 in Dalymount Park by hosts Bohemians. Goals from Leah Glennon and Katie Lovely, while Shamrock Rovers also beaten 2-0 at home. They were beaten by Athlone Town, obviously 2023 winners, and into their fourth consecutive FAI Cup final. Athlone Town going for a league and cup double is still on for them. Aaron, your thoughts? You were at a couple of the games over the weekend. There was, of course, league games as well, some refix games. Shels beating DLR 4-0. While Galway and Peamount did battle Galway, coming out 2-1 winners in that encounter as well. We'll go through all the football. We're also talking a few bits and pieces coming out of the FAI in recent weeks.
Don't forget Athlone's Champions League game last Wednesday.
What? A Champions League this time of year?
Oh, no. Europa Cup game.
Yeah. Europa Cup, of course, Glasgow City in town on Wednesday night this week. 3-0 down, unfortunately, at Athlone from the first leg. We'll talk about that game. You were, of course, in Glasgow for that on Wednesday night, was it? During the week. So lots and lots happening over the last couple of days. We might start with Athlone in Europe before we get into the Cup semi-finals and the league title hunt. We'll also be chatting before the end of the show about ongoing stuff in the FAI, some good, some bad. We've seen the position of head of women's football re-advertised. That's probably a positive. It does kind of put a line in the sand in terms of the Eileen Gleeson situation, and that she's obviously not getting that job. We kind of knew that. That's kind of been fairly obvious to anyone watching in from the outside over the last couple of weeks or even months. That job has been re-advertised. It'll be interesting to see who applies for that and maybe who gets it. We've been seeing a very strong Irish focus in the senior management jobs in the FAI of late. Will not be continued with that particular role. There's also, unfortunately, a bad news story out of the FAI this week. It's a rare week when we don't have one of those in the last few months. One coach suspended for inappropriate contact with family members, mothers, sisters of players being coached within his remit. And that's a bit of a bad news story coming out of the FAI over the last couple of weeks or a couple of days even. We might chat about that later on in the show. So yeah, it's kind of, as well as the ongoing redundancy situations in Abbottstown, it's a strange kind of juxtaposition, Aaron, isn't it? When you're advertising senior management roles and looking for voluntary redundancies at grassroots level, well, across the whole organization.
And announcing 2 high profile positions have been filled as well last week with John Martin and
Shane Robinson. I get the concept of what they're trying to do, but it just doesn't look well. Like, you got to fill from the top down, and we've seen an awful lot of toxic situations coming out of the FAI since the whole John Delaney era, and it hasn't really changed that much from the outside looking in terms of the mood or the morale of staff or of the organization.
You know what's interesting? It just reminds me, I don't want to get on a rabbit hole of this, but I had a chat with Athlone CEO Stephen Gray last Wednesday in Glasgow, and he was even talking about sort of the culture in Athlone and the rebuild job that needs to be done in terms of the culture in Athlone. It just seems the culture of Irish football. We have great people, unbelievable people who do unbelievable work. There's still always that core nucleus across the board of that people who bring it down, and it's the same in the FAI. It's the same everywhere. Like, I thought we'd have been coming on here talking this week about the FAI appointments in the sense of John Martin, considering he was a big ally of women's football in Shamrock Rovers. He was a big ally of the women's team in Rovers. He was often attended Rovers women's games, had his kids with him, and I thought we'd be coming in talking about how that can potentially be a positive for women's football in this country, and then, you know, we're rocked by another scandal. It's nearly as if you sort of ask yourself, is what's next?
Yeah,
and that's not. And the problem is we don't want to be here talking about this stuff. We want to be here talking about the good, the you know, Bohs getting to a first ever FAI Cup final. We want to be here talking about that sort of stuff. The league title race, it's still on, even though it is out of Shels' hands. We want to be talking about that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, like Eleanor Ryan Doyle's amazing goal at the weekend. I want to talk about that. That's what we want to be talking about on the show. We want to be bigging up everything women's football in the country, and it's just soul destroying. I won't say week after week, but definitely month after month coming on here and having to talk about these other situations.
It's 100% demoralising.
Let's talk about the football. Let's talk about the Champions League while we have, not Champions League, the Europa Cup, while we still have a team.
We started off.
Yeah, because it's realistically we're 3-0 down to Glasgow. It's a very, very solid Glasgow City side, albeit not a whole pile better than Athlone, just probably that little bit more clinical, that little bit more ruthless than the Irish side. Is that fair to say? You were at the game, you would have had a better view of it than maybe we would have had watching the stream.
First goal frustrated me. Absolutely frustrated me. Because when that header comes out from the corner, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce her name, the Finnish attacker, the pacer, take her down, take the yellow cards. Don't go and sort of let her run. But the pacer, and when she got through, when she got to about the halfway line, you're looking at it and you're thinking, this is on, this is going to be, and then like the ball across the box, flash go, I haven't seen it back properly to see if she actually got something to her, or if it just went through her hands, or she just missed it. But like the ball across was lovely, and like when you look at the 3 goals, the 3 goals come from the Finnish winger sort of getting past that long players. Like the 2 goals when she got passed on the right hand, like there were 2 low, all 3 goals with 3 low balls into the box. 3 goals that are completely preventable. You then look at sort of Kelly Brady had a chance. If it's 3-1, it might be a slightly different game. Well, like for me, like when Athlone look back at it, it's probably a little more frustration. The one thing that I was seeing, and I don't know if it come across in the stream, was that both Roisin Malloy and Maddy Gibson, how quiet they were kept. And I felt Kelly Brady was very, very isolated. Like there was times even where Lisa Evans, the Scottish international, was clever. Little sly run into the back of Maddy, little clever little things that, just to be like, I'm here, and it's like it's not to say that Glasgow are a very good side, but the problem for Athlone is it's the same when they play Breidablik in the last round. They can't afford to have them moments that they switch off and they get penalised. It's like what they do to a League of Ireland team when a League of Ireland team switches off against them and they just break with Maddy or they break with Roisin, boom, into the box, gone. Like it was one of them that when you look back at it, I think they probably show, for me, I think they show Glasgow a little bit too much respect at times. And I just, I'd love to see them just maybe get the ball, like the likes of Hannah Waish, Alexa Strickland, Kate Slevin in the middle of the park, and just sort of pass the ball, move things, and they just look like they were rushing things a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with most of that, to be honest. I think I was really impressed with a couple of the Glasgow players, and I mean only a couple of the Glasgow players who stood out as probably being better than the average on the pitch. Particularly for me, I thought Lisa Forrest on the left wing for Glasgow was impressive.
Who's her brother?
Her brother. She's 2 brothers that played. I can't remember the Alan's one, and is it Jason?
James Forrest,
yeah. Played for Celtic and Scotland, and like so quick, but so technically good, and only a kid. I think she's only maybe 18 or 19. So like so much potential there for her. I know, like I wish her and all the best, but I don't think she'll be at Glasgow City too long. Yeah, she's just 19 and a half or so. So I was really impressed with her, the experience in goal of Leigh Alexander and Leigh Gibson, as she is now.
come here. I need to stop presenting on this, right? I think the team sheet said Alexander, the jersey said Gibson.
Yeah.
Now we know it originally is Leigh Alexander, she's been there for a long time playing for Scotland. I think she's a very, very good goalkeeper. Like, I don't know. The one thing that caught my eye in terms of Glasgow is when they're 3-0 up, and they can bring off Abby Harrison, who's a Scottish international, just to be like, come on, Abby, come off, take a break.
Yeah, it was something else. And like Erin McLaughlin, I thought was all right in midfield. I think she's looking forward to to getting a game in Ireland again, having a family at a game, even if they'll be in the away dressing room. I think she was quoted as on the somewhere during the week I saw her quoted as saying she was really looking forward to having her family coming down from the League to Athlone next week.
I actually spoke to her as well, and I actually made there was an issue with the recording. I actually spoke to her, and she was like, "When is she ever going to get to come back and play in Ireland?" And these sort of things. Emily Whelan as well. Like, it's great in that sort of sense, and like she'd have played with a lot of the Athlone girls, played with several underage internationals, and like you would have loved to see the tie still be really, 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 really alive going into the second leg, but I just think the big difference is, and when we talk about the Shamrock Rovers game in a minute, the fact that Glasgow could go out and make 7, 8, 9 changes at the weekend in their league game, and still be successful. It just shows the difference in the likes of the squads that these sort of clubs have. But like me and you were sort of chatting on Wednesday evening after the game, and like when you see a crowd of 492 there, not a very big crowd, a lot of kids there as well. Like the question is like when you see what Glasgow can do, and a lot of the things that they're doing is probably bringing in funding through sponsorship and stuff like that. Like it's mad when for such a little small crowd and a little venue. It's not even their venue. It's Partick Thistle own the community centre, as far as I know, because it's all Partick Thistle advertising around the ground. Like it's mad what a small club, independent club in Scotland can do.
Yeah. Well, you look at that number is not far off the average of some of the clubs in our league. And that's for a big game. Like it's not exactly earth-shattering numbers in terms of community and in terms of support for arguably one of the biggest games of their season. So maybe they don't see it as one of the biggest games of the season because their expectation is probably to go fairly deep in this competition. But I think from an Irish point of view, it shows that like we weren't, I want to say we, I mean Athlone is in terms of representing this league, we weren't that far off the pace. The clinical nature of their finishing, the bit of ruthlessness, the bit of kind of the dark arts was evident, which our girls just didn't have, probably from a lack of experience of playing at that level. Glasgow City, they're used to this. They've played it. Most of them have played international football of some shape or form. Most of them have been in the Champions League in previous seasons for a couple of rounds. So we're seeing maybe the evolution of where Irish clubs should be aiming for. Like I think it's very realistic for us. For any Irish club coming out of the League of Ireland now to be aiming to get either to the first round proper of the Champions League or getting to, more realistically, probably getting to the last 8 maybe of the Europa Cup. I think that's a realistic target going forward to get through a round or 2 from where Athlone will get to this year. Do you give them a chance of getting through on Wednesday? I'm not sure they can pull back a 3-0 deficit. They'd need a very early goal, and then
I don't want to be disrespectful to Athlone, but I don't give them any chance. And one of the main reasons I don't give them any chance is the fact that they've had to play the exact same team on Wednesday as they played on Sunday. Them players looked at times yesterday, even against Shamrock Rovers in the second half, some of them looked out on their feet. And they've been constantly playing week in, week out, where you've seen so many of the same players. Like, fatigue is going to have to catch up on them. And the concern that I have for Athlone at the minute is the fact that when you look at, say, for example, league fixtures, like Athlone have a lot of league games still to play in the next, month and a bit. Like, they've still got 5 league games to play, plus the FAI Cup final, plus they've got the Europa Cup. So Athlone have got 7 games between now and the 19th of... Between now and the 19th of October, they've got still got 7 games to play. If they were to somehow pull it off against Glasgow, you'll add in an extra game that we played before the cup final. So like, that's a lot of games to play, and especially considering they're playing the same core players all the time. Like I've a lot of concerns from in that sort of sense of.
That being said, do you still expect them to win the league and the cup? It's hard to bet against them.
I expect them to win the league.
Yeah. Favourites
for the cup final, 100%. Katie McCarron says 5th for Bohs. It's definitely a big difference in the sense of the Bohs team with and without her. Are they favourites? Are they big favourites to win the cup final? Yes, I would say they are. But the question is how are the bodies going to be coming into the build of that cup final? And I think realistically they're going to have to make changes. They're going to have to rely on some of the younger players or some of the fringe players in certain games to get over the line. Like for them, they're probably hoping if they beat Shels on Saturday week, sort of takes the pressure away completely a good bit, and then they can rotate a little bit more between the last couple of games, but like it's a difficult one.
Yeah, interesting to see how it pans out from here. I'd say the same. I think they probably have the league in the bag. It would take an absolute disaster from their point of view in the last 5 games to see them drop the 4 points required to bring Shels back into contention. While at the same time, I can't see them not being the massive favourites going into the cup final. I think Bohs, to be fair to them, they've made 2 cup finals this year in the All-Ireland Cup and the FAI Cup. It's been a fantastic year. It's been a breakthrough year for them. I think I'm delighted for the whole team. I'm delighted for the manager. I know we've had him on the show once or twice. I think
I'm going to criticise him tonight.
Well, listen, it wouldn't be a League of Ireland Women's podcast here without Aaron criticizing somebody. So yeah, unfortunately, it's Albin's turn tonight. But yeah, it's one of those things. I think it's been a really, really good year for Bohs, and I think they finally put themselves on the map. Where, if you look at their point of view, yeah, the league form hasn't been phenomenal in terms of being a challenge for the top 3 or 4 spots that they would have hoped for. But 2 cup finals, it's better than anyone else in Dublin. You know, nobody else in Dublin has got to the cup finals. So
yeah, but you think about this as well, though, Bethany, right? If they beat Wexford tomorrow evening,
yep,
they go to within 3 points of Wexford.
True.
With 4 games to go. If they go on a bit of a run between now and the end of the season, they could sort of increase that league form. But for me, everything for Bohs has to be on the cup final. But let's talk a little bit about the Athlone Shamrock Rovers game.
Okay.
Oh, I want to talk about the negative first. The whole thing around the rugby markings, the TV coverage, the whole lot.
What TV coverage? It wasn't on TV, and that's the whole point. No. That's the whole point.
That's like it was live on YouTube, live on the TG Car Player. Like, I looked at one stage, I turned it off at half time to go and do something, and then I swapped the wire later from my TV to my MacBook, and I was looking at the numbers. Like, the numbers even watching it live weren't great on YouTube, and like, TG Car can take no blame for the fact that they only had a main commentator, they only had bare cameras, did no replays. They'd show me the other sport live. TG Car, if they had had on Saturday evening, would have had the full production, would have had the exact same production that they had for Bohs and Treaty, where it was brilliant. You could see all the replays, you can see it. Like, I even had the FAI started asked me, can I hold back doing post-game interviews for the Bohs game? Because they were looking to get people, get them live on TG Car. And, you know, that sort of thing where TG Car pull a full thing into, they were constantly trying to show. And, like, it just, to me, it was a letdown, the fact that Shamrock Rovers players didn't get the game live on TV the way they did, and the Athlone players the way they deserved. For me, the players were let down by, whether it be the stadium owners, the FAI, whoever it was who miscommunicated, whether it was Shamrock Rovers, we don't know exactly who it was, but whoever it was made a big error in judgment on the pitch.
Let's talk about off the pitch for a second before you get into the on the pitch stuff, because if we want to get all the negative out of the way, I thought, and it's the one screenshot I sent to you just at kickoff, the attendance was dismal for a cup semi-final, with one of the best sides in the country and the home side in Shamrock Rovers. Okay, Tallagh's a big stadium.
448 is the official attendance.
Like, anything short of 4 figures is a disgrace, in my opinion, on a Sunday afternoon with very little other competition for eyeballs for youngsters who are now back in school. You've had a whole 2 weeks to promote that in the primary schools in the region. All the clubs are back playing games. Nobody's playing schoolgirl football at 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. That game should have had minimum 1,000 people at it. And it just looks like Shamrock Rovers didn't. Well, maybe it's probably down to the circumstances that they didn't have the opportunity to know when the game was going to be played. You flagged it with the FAI weeks in advance. It was very obvious to anybody that it was a clash weeks ago. They left it so late to set the date and time for the game, and maybe there's outside influences that they couldn't.
So I have a bit more on this. And I got this clarified to me last Wednesday when I was in Glasgow. I was talking to people in Athlone. I'd sort of said to you off the air. I don't know if I said to you or said it, because I was talking to someone in Bohs, and there was talk of the cup semi-final actually being played this weekend, being played this Saturday instead of Shels Bohs. Instead of Bohs and Rovers in the league, and Athlone's league game would have been moved as well. TG Car were all up for it as well. But the problem with that situation is that then became a sort of a curveball that they had to move 4 different sets. They moved so many different teams, so many different things. And the FAI tried to do it, but like other club, like if you're a Bohs or someone like that, you're like, why would I accommodate accommodate you to sort of, or why would another club sort of go out bend backwards because someone in your club and someone in your circumstances has turned around and said, listen, we made a mistake. Like for me, I would have liked to see them being told it had to be played at that time because it was evident from when the day the draw happened. It was evident that the one game was going to be 4:00, one game was going to be 7:35, and they were both going to be live in TG Car. Like I would have liked the FAI to turn around and said, you know what, listen, whoever it is has made the mistake here within your law. We're going to tell you it needs to be moved venue, whether it be moved to a different League of Ireland ground in Dublin, or because to me
could have reversed the fixture.
Like, could you imagine? Like, and I was so looking forward to it. And I was talking to Laura Donovan, who was actually working for RTE the weekend. She was supposed to be working for TG Car in the second game. And like, I was talking to her and saying, like, I would have been loving to be going interviewing Bohs, jumping straight over to Tallaght, getting over to Tallaght at kickoff. The buzz would have been there. Everyone would have been all over social media because of the fact that the Bohs 3D game, straight into the second game. It's what the league would have needed. It would have been so good for the league. Like no disrespect to the men's game, and I say this, the men's game is in a completely different place. The men's game can afford to have a cup semi-final on a Friday and a cup semi-final on a Sunday. They can afford that because they know they're going to get some crowd who are going to watch the one on the Friday, going to watch the one on the Sunday. Women's football can't afford to lose a prime opportunity to have a game on television and have a game sort of showcased all like that. I can't afford that sort of stuff. And the women's game here is in a completely different position, and it's just so frustrating because we're here week in, week out. We're here because we want to be here, because we love doing what we're doing. We enjoy talking about the positive sides of women's football. When we're having to talk about this, it's like I said at the start, the FAI stuff can be soul destroying. These sort of things are as bad and as frustrating because we want to see the women's game grow. We want to see the women's game go to the next level. But these are the sort of things where the women are just put back to the back of the pile.
Yeah, 100%. 100% agree with you. And for me, I'm just disappointed that it just seemed to be kind of last resort kind of stuff. Just, it'll happen. Don't worry too much about it. We messed up, but who really cares? And I just think it's an opportunity lost, particularly for Shamrock Rovers, particularly with some of the big names that they have attached. Like you've got Anya Gorman in the squad, you've got Stephanie Zambra in the dugout. You have a huge opportunity there to really drive home the club in the greater Tallaght area and get a fraction, even if you could get even a quarter of the regular Shamrock Rovers men's home gates. If you could get 1,500 to 2,000, if you have to make it primary school girls, so be it. Do you know what I mean? Get them in the door, get them wanting to be on the pitch in 10 or 15 years' time, get them wanting to play the game with their local teams. That's where the opportunity is, and I think it's an opportunity lost for Shamrock Rovers. They'll get plenty more, don't get me wrong, but it's just I feel they could have done a bit more to really get that home. They just didn't do that, unfortunately for me, and it's a disappointment. Let's talk about the football, because Athlone did win the game 2-0, which is kind of the important part. First goal, penalty. Thoughts?
She doesn't need to make the tackle. She doesn't need to make that tackle. I think that's a little bit of a communication error in terms of Shamrock Rovers, because I don't think she doesn't need to make it at all, and it's a penalty. It's a penalty all day. It's a penalty all day.
For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's Oisin Malloy makes a break down the right hand side, cuts the ball in. I think it's Kate Slevin, plays it back to Hannah Waish, gets a touch and gets taken out of it. She's moving away from goal. She's not really a threat, and just a trailing foot. I can't remember which player it was that actually caught her. But it's just unfortunate, and
it is that. No, it is made that cutter.
Yeah, you're right. So Hannah Waish, probably my player. They gave player of the game to Kate Slevin, but for me, Hannah Waish was the best player on the pitch on Sunday evening. Your thoughts on how Athlone played in terms of the goal? Obviously, the penalty, Kelly Brady scores fairly easily. I thought Summer Lawless had a fantastic game. Won't be too happy about the second goal, though.
No, I don't think she'll be too happy about the second goal, but I don't think Stephanie Zambra will be happy about it either, especially considering the delivery, the way it was allowed to sort of bounce for Gibson. It's one of them that it could have been cut out, but like even if they go in 0-0 at half time, Athlone definitely looked as though they were third in that second half.
Yeah,
goes in 0-0, and Shamrock Rovers can sort of get that opportunity when Athlone are tiring. I think Rovers could have done it, but like the problem for Rovers is, and it's difficult to play the champions in the cup and then the last year's finalists back to back, and sort of expect two big, massive performances like that. And like the one thing I will say, the Rovers squad, you take out Scarlett Heron, who's gone to Hibs and made our Hibs debut at the weekend. Like that's another big player taken out of their defence, and I just felt like for Rovers, I really just didn't see them winning the game. I think like Emily Corba for me, I think should be probably scoring more goals than she is scoring from them this year. It's probably having one of her better seasons, but I just think at times I look at Rovers and I'm sort of thinking, what way are they trying to play? What are they trying to do? It's a very, very young squad. I think Ella Kelly had a decent enough game for them, but listen, once they go 1-0 down, they were never coming back from me. And that second goal, they were definitely disappointed with. Could have been the last time we see Anya O'Gorman in an FAI Cup semi-final. Potentially, I think when we look at Shamrock Rovers, I just look at it as a massive rebuilding job that is needed at that club next season. I think they probably need to trim some of the squad that they have. They have some good young players there. They probably need to trim some of the squad they have. And it's going to take a lot of players to come in there for Rovers to be competitive, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Emily Corbett, she's been one of the big names in the league for the last couple of years, and it just hasn't really worked for her. At probably the last 3 or 4 moves she's made have just, like, she only spent a little period at Wexford. She was at Athlone, where obviously she was great at Athlone, but I think one of the allegations that we've made on the show over the years is that she's been phenomenal. Her scoring record against teams in the bottom half of the table is phenomenal. Her scoring record against teams in the top half of the table a little bit less so. Like this season, I've just had a quick look through. The only goal she scored against anybody in the top half of the league this year has been against Galway earlier on in the year. She had 2 against Treaty. Well, actually, sorry, Treaty are top half of the season of the league this year, but those 2 goals were a week apart in March. Since then, it's been 2 goals against DLR in the Premier Division, 3 goals against Waterford, 1 goal against Sligo Rovers. So since March, she hasn't scored against anybody in the top 8 in the division, and that's not good enough.
I also don't think Rovers play to our strengths at times either.
Probably not. I don't think
Rovers play to our strengths at times. The problem for me now when I look at Shamrock Rovers right now is this is still an audition for Stephanie Zambrick. Like everybody talks about, if Stephanie gets the job, could we potentially be seeing an Anya O'Gorman go in as a number 2 with Stephanie next year? I don't think that's an option. If you're going to give Stephanie Zambrick this job, I think they need to have a really, really strong assistant manager in there that's going to help her. I think it's definitely been a massive upward curve for her. She's won 3 games out of 8. Granted, she's played against the likes of Peamount, Athlone twice, Wexford, Galway, Shels. She's beaten Shels, beaten Sligo Rovers, and beaten Waterford. But like, it's been a really, really difficult second half of the season for Shamrock Rovers, and I'm going to say this now, and this is not sort of and you know the way I've sort of said I have my opinion on whether Steph has the experience or not. But if they had Collie O'Neill, or if they had other managers in that situation right now, I'm not convinced they win any more games than what they've won right now.
No,
and that's not me turning around trying to defend Stephanie here. That's just being honest. I don't think the squad is good enough. And like you sort of, when I said at the start of the season, I thought they could finish 7th. And I said they're young players. Like when you take out the likes of your Scarletts there in that situation, you even take out Joy Ralph, they too probably have that more experienced players, even though they're only kids themselves. Like, and they haven't replaced them. Like, no disrespect to the players they brought in, but like they brought players in that maybe haven't been starting at other clubs or haven't been featuring at other clubs, and expect them just to sort of fill up the bodies. And I was also told of a couple of different names, I won't name them on air, of players who they tried to sign as well during the previous window. Players who aren't even in the league at this stage. And like that's why I say it's going to be a massive rebuilding job. And I think if Rovers are serious about where they want to be in women's football, I think they're going to have to be if they go with Stephanie, they're going to have to be patient. It's going to be a couple of year job before them to get for them to be really, really competitive in this league.
But I think it's going to be a couple of years for anybody who comes into that job. You're at least looking
100%.
at 18 months from now before you can be competitive. And I think realistically, And this is the problem I feel a lot of clubs in the League of Ireland, when it comes to the women's side of things, don't really fully understand. For those of us who've been involved in the league or in covering women's football or been involved in the game, and you're over a decade, I'm probably over 2 decades at this stage, watching women's football, it's a different game. We say this every month. We say this on the podcast. It's not the same as the men's game. You need somebody who knows the women's game, who's respected within the women's game, to come in, unless you're bringing in a really, really big name into the women's game. And Collie O'Neill is probably not even a big enough name in terms of what I'm talking about. You need to be bringing in like a Damien Duff or somebody coming into a club to really attract instant success and bring in all the best of the players. And that's realistically not going to happen. So you need someone with that similar name within the women's game. So unless you're going to come in with somebody who's as high profile as Steph Roach within the game, or has a background and success of the level of that within the game, I don't think there's a better candidate out there than Steph. Yes, the results are not phenomenal at the moment, but like you said, I don't think anyone else is going to get a better result at the moment with the players she has at her disposal. And I think you need to, if you're going to give her the opportunity, and I do think Rovers should, I think you need to see probably 2 windows before you're going to see, if not even 3 windows. You could need this offseason, June next year or July next year, and next off season to really be competitive. But I think Steph has I think she has the personality. I think she has the chops and the reputation to bring in decent players. And I mean like league title challenging players from both, not just from Ireland, but her network. Don't forget, this girl has played in America. She's played in Sunderland. She's played in France. She's played in Italy, albeit for short enough spells. But she does have contacts from those kind of networks, better than most people within the women's game here in Ireland. And don't be surprised if you see her bringing in a more committed version, shall we say, of Roisha Littlejohn. Someone like Izzy Groves, who's had a bit of experience in the championship in England, coming in to really bolster a young side in Rovers. And I think if they give her the opportunity and back her to bring in players of that quality, I think Rovers will be competitive. Probably not in 26, but definitely in 27. And I think if you go in with that mindset, you might be competitive in 27. If you just go and which would I fear might happen, is just bring in a big name from the League of Ireland in terms of men's football, as Collie O'Neill would be. I think you end up in the same situation in 12 and 24 months' time going, how are we going to fix this problem?
But like if you look at the situation, like even Kieran Kilduff, like the one thing people don't realise is that he was coaching the Maynooth women's college team before so it's not as if like people say, oh, Kilduff jumped in and look at the success he had. It wasn't as such. You even speak to, like I speak to players like Leah Doyle, and she talked about Kieran, how, she nearly even joined Athlone because of Kieran and about his mentorship towards her. And like, if they have to have some sort of women's football experience, because coaching women and coaching men or coaching boys are 2 completely different things. Like, and Graham Kelly won't want me saying this, but like if you look at someone like Graham Kelly, it took Graham Kelly a while to adjust. In terms of it took a lot of different coaches to adjust. Collie O'Neill didn't necessarily adjust the way he needed to adjust. But the thing about it is
I think he did eventually, but I think the initial start gave him such a handicap. He had to. Even when he adjusted, I don't think he caught up with himself, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I agree. But like the thing for me is,
that's not necessarily his fault. That's not necessarily his fault.
It's not. It's not.
That came from other individuals within Shamrock Rovers at the initial start, and
I think if Collie O'Neill starts with what he started with this year, I think it's a different story. It's a completely different story. But the problem is, and as you say, they're coming from what other individuals have said, other individuals have spoken. Rovers have to deliver in terms of the women's football, and that's where the problem is. The problem is now, and like I would love for someone in Shamrock Rovers to turn around and say, "Hold our hands up, we got it wrong. We come in here, wrong approach. We're planning on doing this. We're gonna back this manager. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this." Yeah. Because I think that's what it is going to take, and it's not going to be turned around and be like, "Oh, that's okay. Who's the best male manager available? Who's involved in the League of Ireland?" Like it's not just gonna jump ship, and I think they need to be very strategic in what they do. And like I was even speaking to people even in terms of Rovers underage, in terms of the women's structures and stuff like that. they're now starting to get that sort of things in place where they're starting to have structures from even better structures from an underage, and that's all going to feed through. And you want to have the whole club running on that same hymn sheet that it feeds through to your senior team to where 3-4 years, 2-3 years down the line, you're continuing to bring them players through the conveyor belt, and you've got that manager who knows exactly everybody in the every strength, every weakness of every player in the club. And is Zamber the right person to do it? I'm not sure. Does she deserve an opportunity? I think so.
Yeah,
because
I don't think
the position they're in. I think the position they're in. It's not a situation where the position they're in right now. It's not a situation where they can turn around and say she's not good enough. She's not this. Because the squash is not good enough at the minute. So I would give it to her.
I think when it comes to the game, and I'm biased, I coached Steph for 2 years. We've been friends for nearly 2 decades. She's been a podcast host of this for the first season of the podcast as well. I'm completely biased, but I do think that she deserves the opportunity. And I don't think you'll find somebody who is better in terms of the effort they'll put in terms of the focus they'll give the role, in terms of the lack of, I don't even know how to say this, but in terms of not using the position as a stepping stone to get somewhere else, whether it's into the international setup or whether it's into the men's game. I think Steph would see this as almost the pinnacle of what's capable for her at the moment. I think in 5 or 10 years' time, you'd hope she'd be looking at an international role with the underage teams or with a senior side potentially down the road. I'm sure that's in her career path in her head. But she sees this as a project that she can cut her teeth on for a couple of years. This isn't a short-term fix for her if she gets given that job. And I haven't been speaking to her on purpose. I don't want to know what her thoughts are on this. But I think she will bring that passion and that know-how and network to the role, and I'd love to see her get given the role.
I spoke to her recently. And the funny is, I didn't speak about soccer when I spoke to her recently. You know what I mean? And like the thing about it is like it's difficult to find. It's a different thing. Is people say, "Oh, but what about this person, this person, this person's available?" Yeah, go for them. But the problem is no matter who Shamrock Rovers go for, they need to give the same backing to whoever gives the manager's position to, because at the minute, Shamrock Rovers are not making progress. And like we've seen, Bohs sort of have that little bit of a lull. Then Ken made a bit of progress. Albion's taking them on massively this season again, getting to 2 cup finals. Like, we have to remember, Shamrock Rovers has a deep history in women's football. What are the 8-time women's cup winners?
Ooh, I think it's 6. But I'm going to check now while I'm chatting to you. But I think it's 6.
Well, like that's what I mean. They've won the cup multiple times, and like I think Rovers just need to turn around and be like, okay, we need a strategic plan. What are we going to do with our women's team? Are we going to look short term, medium, long term? Because there's no doubt they want success, but just I think they can sort of look at what Stephen Bradley done. And I was a critic of Bradley at the start, but I think they can look at what Bradley done and sort of build in that same process.
Yeah, no, it was 6. It was 6 years in a row, 1996 to 2001. Pretty dominant period of time for them at the time. It's a huge achievement for them over the years, but obviously not since their return to women's football. Won All-Ireland Cup. I think they got the All-Ireland Cup final last year, if memory serves me right. So yeah, had the chance this weekend, obviously. In terms of the other semi-final, Bohs at home to Treaty.
Just before we do, I think from the other side of it, I think from an Athlone viewpoint, we'll be having the same conversation about the Athlone management ticket probably over the next couple of weeks as well. Sullivan is in a bit of a shop window phase himself, so I think we'll be talking as much about Athlone's manager over the next couple of weeks as we will be Stephanie Zamber.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in, I suppose, that role, but John Sullivan, the man in possession at the moment, will he still be there at the start of next season remains to be seen. Let's move to the other semi-final. Bohs and Treaty in Dalymount. Solid victory for Bohs. They're into their second senior final, first FAI Women's Cup final, but second senior final of the season after the All-Ireland Cup. Not overly impressive from Bohemians, but they got the job done. They'll be happy enough with the result.
I thought it was a professional performance. I thought it was professional in the sense of And I don't often say this, but I nearly think Ava Brennan at times had Bella Ficini tied to the hip. And I think when Treaty look back at it, they'll look back at some of the opportunities they had. But for me, I think Bohs full value for the win. First goal, I don't think Timmy was going to want to see that back when it goes underneath her body. And then Lovely to the rescue with the second one, considering Katie Lovely's the only remaining player from that 2020 squad of their first season. And she comes and scores a second and sends them to the cup final. I just felt Bohs were comfortable throughout the game. I think if Katie Lawley's strike goes in that hits the post, it could be a different game. I think if that goes in, I do see Treaty potentially of getting a second goal and potentially getting more. Probably near enough the exact same spot where she scored the screamer in the league game between the two sides. But for me, I felt Bohs were comfortable throughout. I think Alvin Heiss has learned a big lesson from, even if you look back at the All-Ireland Cup game against Wexford, in the sense that he made early substitutions when he started to see players starting to tire. He didn't wait and sort of be reactive. He was a little bit more proactive. I do have a little bit of a gripe with one of the substitutions, however. I would not have brought on Katie McCarron. Katie McCarron was in the boot 2 weeks ago. She looked in an awful lot of pain at full-time whistle when she was walking up and down. I think when you're 2-0 up in that sort of game, I would not have risked Katie McCarron. I would not have played her against Wexford. I would have left her for another week or two and let her just gradually ease in. They didn't need her. If you need her to try and come on and change the game, fair enough, that's grand. But like for players who's been out for so long, to bring her for 23 minutes, and like she struck one of the balls, and you could see she even had her football boot off after the game. She was in that much pain. To me, I think I just wouldn't have, in a game where you didn't necessarily need her when you're 2-0 up and you're comfortable, I wouldn't have risked it. And that's me. And I even asked Alvin after, and he sort of said, well, if you're going to get a 20, if you can get it, even if it's not our best 20 minutes, for me, I just thought, because myself and one of the other journalists who were in the press box were talking about it, and I was like, why would you bring her on here? It makes no sense, especially coming back from an injury from so long. And listen, I know Alvin's going to not be happy with me for saying this, but for me, that's the one that I took away, and I was like, I wouldn't have risked her. What if she gets it re-injured and she's not especially if you're winning the game, you're 2-0 up, you're comfortable.
Yeah,
I just don't think you needed to risk it. But for me, like, I never thought I'd say this, but like Rachel Kelly had a very, very quiet cup semi-final. She didn't have to do an awful lot. I think when Sean Russell looks back on it, I think Sean Russell's going to have a little bit of regret, especially when you look at that first half. There was times where 2-0 down and they've nearly got 8 players back. And that's what sort of allowed the likes of Hannah Healy, the likes of Ava Brennan, that much control in midfield, because Treaty had so many players back deep, and Bohs could sort of pick them off. They could have man markers at times. And second half, they went to a back forward when they brought Gillian Keenan on. But I just think from a Treaty viewpoint, the performance maybe it just wasn't there, and wasn't there on the day. And I think Bohs was just full value for the win.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. I think no more than that, I think Lisa Twomey won't be too excited to watch that first goal back anyway. At least it was just unfortunate for her point.
The second one, I think Kate was unlucky for the second one.
Yeah.
When she tries to come and clear, and she sort of, where she steps off from the front throws, she reads it brilliantly. She sees where it's going, but she just slices it on the falls to Lovely, and I don't think Kate can do anything about that.
No, I don't think anybody can do anything with that. The power she hit it with from such close range, I think that's going in the back of the net all day, every day. In terms of the cup final, before we move on to the league games, your thoughts? We touched on it at the top of the show. Are we looking at Athlone massive favourites, but Bohs on the day could kind of get a surprise across the line?
Yeah, Athlone have won the first hurdle. Athlone are the designated home team. Would have been interesting to see the Bohs women's team as a designated home team in the Shamrock Rovers dressing room. Yeah, I'd say Athlone are probably value favourites. I still look back in the league game a couple of weeks ago where I think Bohs probably should have beaten them when they scored late. Like, my only concern, as I said earlier on the top of the show, is are Athlone in danger of running out of legs for that cup final, considering they're constantly playing the same 10, 11 players. I think if they win the league early enough, they could sort of rest one or two. But if they lose to Shelbourne, they can't really focus on that cup final. They can't really focus on that cup final either. I'm not sure where my head's at in terms of the cup final just yet. I will definitely give you a prediction on the week of the cup final when we sort of speak to them, when you speak to the two clubs and sort of understand what's going on. But for me, yeah, Athlone are massive favourites in the minute, but there's a long way to go before they can really start looking at the cup final.
Of course, there was 2 league games at the weekend as well. Shels, it was the Mackenzie Anthony show. She might only have gotten the score sheet once, but the composure she showed for the first goal, where she basically just held the ball up in the DLR box, passed the ball back to Aoibheann Clancy, who finished with a lovely finish from the edge of the box. Shels just in control. They really seem to have decided they're not taking the foot off the gas. Even though things are outside their control, they look like they want that league title.
Yeah, 16 different goal scorers for Shels this season. They've had 16 different goal scorers. They've now had seven players have either 10 plus goals contributed to either goals or assists this season. And they just, like, they're finding the net. When they find the net, they find the net, frequently. When Shels are on, Shels are just superb. But the problem is of late, consistency hasn't necessarily been, where things are. It's frustrating because I think Shels will sort of look back at the game against Athlone, the goal that wasn't given. I think Shels will look back at that and sort of say, what could have been? What could have been? Like, if they win that, if they get a point in that game, it means the defeat to Galway isn't necessarily as bad. But like, even the goals you can see against Galway, you do have fears over Shels defensively going over the next couple of games, but very good going forwards. Alex Kavanagh just runs that show for them. I think, yeah, you're right. Mackenzie Anthony was brilliant, but Alex Kavanagh runs the show for Shels.
Is that the easiest goal Alex Kavanagh will ever score for Shels?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably is.
Let's jump over to the other side of the city. Peamount and Galway United doing battle. We love this fixture. Ever since the last game of the season, we won't give James Callahan any more nightmares, but it was Lauren Callahan's opportunity to get a nightmare at the weekend. She gave away a penalty. I don't know if it was a penalty. Your thoughts on that kind of battle, or that kind of clash coming together in the box?
One of them that some referees are going to give it, some aren't. I probably wouldn't have given it myself. But Ceola Bergin done well. She dispatched it superbly, and sort of made no mistake. But it wasn't the greatest game of football, to be honest with you. Wasn't really the greatest game of football. And then you look at even the second goal for me from Eleanor Ryan Doyle, a long range. What was it? 30 seconds into the second half, a long ball forward from on the button. I think Ryan Doyle was brilliant. Eleanor Ryan Doyle is just, she started a little bit of an X factor for Peamount, and especially with them losing Jess Fitzgerald to Hibs, I think she sort of really stepped in since coming back to them during the transfer window. And like, I would have thought Peamount would have won this game, but I just thought about the last game was the Mackenzie Anthony show. This was the Ceola Bergin show. The turn for the winner was just sublime, and I think we started talking at the start of the season that for them to be successful, they need to have herself and Emma Doherty sort of clicking on full tilt. I think Bergin for me was brilliant on Saturday.
Yeah, no, she's really kind of lit the fuse in the last few weeks, and she's got a couple of goals as well, and she's been heavily involved in the build up of a lot of stuff. And Galway have had a rocky patch, but that's 4 wins from 5 for them in the last 5 games. It's a decent run of form for them at a really important time of the season.
Yeah, especially considering that 3rd place is there or thereabouts for whoever wants to really nab it. Like, they're 4 points ahead of Wexford with a game in hand. If Shels, I can't see them catching Shels, even if Shels drop points that long. I just can't see them dropping enough points Shels to catch.
Well, here, let me put up the league table, and you might just chat us through kind of the permutations of what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. Do you want to chat us through there what's happening, Aaron?
Yeah, like, it's an interesting time because, like, you look at here, there's so many different sort of battles and expectations. Like even when it comes to the, like we know straight out the battle for the top. Shels could be top of the table before Athlone even play at the weekend. If Shels are to be treated before Athlone play DLR Waves on Saturday evening, Shels would go top. But like that stage, you're sort of looking at Athlone having 2 games in hand and Shels only being 2 points clear. Like it's a difficult one when you look at that sense. I think for me the one that's really intriguing is probably the battle for third. I think you and I said this earlier. If Bohs beat Wexford, you're sort of talking Bohs could sort of really put a dent in Wexford's ability to get third. I think looking at this, and you'd probably say at the minute that Galway are probably favourites to finish third in the league, and probably got the easier of the run in. They've got Cork City. They then play Wexford, Waterford, and DLR. So you probably fancy Galway could win all 4 of these games. They could win 3 of them as well. I think I'd fancy Galway to finish third if I'm being honest with that run in. I think for Wexford's, finishing fourth, I think would be a really good season. But likewise, the fairy tale in me probably says I want Treaty United to finish third. That's what the fairy tale in me says, because I just love to see the whole thing about where they've come, what they've been. I'd love to see Treaty United finish third, but I just think it could be that little bit too difficult, Brevney, for Treaty to finish third, even though they have won 3 of the last 5 with 2 draws. Like they play Shels, Peamount, Bohs, and Waterford. Like they've 3 really, really difficult games, and I don't really want to. The bottom of the table sort of speaks for itself, but I think they're probably the key battles. And although there's one for me that I'm watching very closely, the Bohs and Rovers battle. Who's going to finish ahead of who? Like it feels strange.
You're mad for Bohs to pass them just so your prediction of 7th will be accurate. That's all you're interested.
Come here. No, I'll go out far saying Peamount. We could finish ahead of them at this stage.
That's like given Peamount's
like Peas are on. Think about it. Peas are only what? Peas are only a point. They're a point behind them. They both played the same amount of games.
Yeah.
The Peas with Eleanor Ryan Doyle is a completely different Peamount team.
I'd agree with that, and completely in terms of how they've been doing the last few weeks. They were bitterly unlucky, really, not to get something out of the Galway game. I think Nicole Nix had a phenomenal. Probably didn't get enough credit for that. She gets a huge performance.
Question on her.
Yep.
Jane Merrin obviously being out with a foot injury. Since she picked the injury up against Shels. Probably gonna be. You might have said, no disrespect to Nicole at this stage, but what would have said when Jane comes back, she's gonna be number 1 goalkeeper. I'm not 100% sure anymore. I think Nicole Nix has had a really good spell in goal for Galway this season.
But I think that's the beauty of the league at the moment, and I think we're seeing it particularly in goalkeepers across the league, where players who were standout 5 years ago are now competing for spots and being competed with for spots. The likes of Marie O'Sullivan has come in at Wexford, and she would have been a number 1 automatic for Cork back in the day. And she didn't really. I think she had to spell it Galway, where it didn't quite work out for maybe on a break.
Would you really call that a?
No, that's fair. She came in from university, so it wasn't quite there full time. And the same.
She went to Watford then after.
But every single I think every single club now have 2, if not 3, potential first choice goalkeepers, and I think that's phenomenal to see in the league. I'm surprised more of them haven't made the step across. I know we lost Katie Keane this year. She went across the water, but there's been very few goalkeepers, and there's plenty of really good goalkeepers in this league.
Yeah, and I don't see many more going, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I just think like Nisha McAloon would have been probably the last to go before Katie. I just think across the water, I think there's a lot of goalkeepers in the UK as well at the minute. I think you have to be.
But I know there's a kind of a standing joke about goalkeepers in women's football, and anyone who doesn't follow the sport very closely kind of has seen there's any amount of memes and footage going around of absolute cock-ups from goalkeepers, mostly 10 years old plus, to be fair, but there's a few more recent ones in there as well. But the standard of goalkeeping in women's sports has gone through the roof compared to where it was a decade ago. And we're really seeing Like Galway could play any one of 2 or 3 goalkeepers at the moment, maybe 4 goalkeepers at the moment.
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily, because Abigail Ronayne is gone.
No, but I mean, this season
She's gone in the last couple of. She's
yeah.
gone the last couple of days. She's another one who's decided to go to the States to continue her education. Like, I think goalkeeper. Do you know what? I think goalkeepers when they go to America it can work out very well for goalkeepers when they go to America, unless you're someone like Nadine Ryan who just doesn't come back and then because done well with.
Lynn Bradley never came back. Do you know what I mean? So she's made a good career for herself coaching in the States now. So she would have been a senior international 15 years ago. So you've got these players who've made great opportunities. You've also got the likes of Jennifer Kett, who we've talked about in the show in terms of her role in Whitehall. She was a manager at Whitehall this year. She went to the States for her masters, and came back and never really kind of played at the elite level again. Kind of retired from international football. Was number 2 to Emma Byrne, and understandably made such a small number of caps for a player who was really, really good back 20, 25 years.
The amount of goalkeepers that been number 2 to Emma Byrne and not made very many caps. Like you can even look at even the likes of Nemo, Grace Maloney. So many players have been number 2 to Emma Byrne and struggle. But like I think you're right. I think you're right in what you're saying. I agree with you. I think goalkeeping has come on massively even in the last 5 years. And the thing about it is, right, is I think our goalkeeping is probably going to come on again. Like if you were to ask us in 10 years' time, how good is our goalkeeping now compared to what will be then? I think we'll turn around and say goalkeeping now is shit because 10 years' time it'll be so much better.
Yeah, like even if you think about Summer Lawless at the weekend, she pulled off 1 triple save at one point. I'm not sure she knew too much about the second save of the 3, but the first and the third one, she definitely did well for her. So
she won Shamrock Rovers Player of the Month.
Yeah, she's had a great. I think if you had said that she'd be in that position 6 months ago at the start of the season, I think you'd have been a bit amazed to say.
I think I was a bit harsh even when. Well, and I was right in what I said in the sense of like if Collie O'Neill was bringing in Katie Keane, he didn't see her as number 1. Katie obviously leaves, and then she's really stepped up to the mark since Katie's left.
Yeah, there's been 1 or 2 wobbles, but that's to be expected of any young player in any position. But I think she's been a really, really positive addition to the Shamrock Rovers side this year for me. In terms of the league going forward, of course, we have some games this week. Wexford host Bohemians tomorrow night. That's a big game for both sides. Bohs kind of needed 3 points if they want to continue their march up the league. Can you see it happening?
Nope. I think Wexford will win this game just because I just think Bohs would have had such an emotional, mental, physical dump from the weekend of getting through that. I think the game could come a little bit too quickly for them.
Of course, there's a full round of fixtures at the weekend as well. First time we've
had
a
Dublin derby. There's a Dublin derby this weekend as well.
Yeah, no, it's when you say Dublin derby, there could be a Dublin derby every weekend, Darren, but there's the Dublin derby in the League of Ireland since Shamrock Rovers host Bohemians. That game on Saturday evening at 5:00. But there's a full round of fixtures. The first time we've had a full round of games in a long, long time, as far as I can remember, since at least before the Champions League started. Shels versus Treaty. That game takes place on Saturday afternoon. Waterford and Wexford. Galway host Cork, while Sligo make the journey to Peamount United. That Dublin derby you mentioned in Tallaght, Bohemians making that journey across the M50 for that one, while Athlone and DLR Waves will do battle there. You'd expect Athlone to pick up.
Just a reminder, Athlone and DLR Waves is live on TG Car.
Yeah, game kicks off at 7:35. I don't know why I said it like that. 7:35. Kicks off.
You're trying to be American?
I don't know what I'm doing. It's too late in the evening for me. But yeah, so Athlone, they host DLR. Should they pick up the 3 points there? Can Shels keep pace with them with Treaty United?
If the Treaty that have come out in some of the league games when they've been really, really good come out the weekend, they could give Shels a scare. But like you look back to when Treaty were last in Dublin to play Shels in the All-Ireland Cup, they didn't turn up. I'd have a little bit of a fear for Treaty in this game that they'll probably be beaten by a couple of goals, but I think if they're one of the teams that are capable of turning over Shels, I'm just not sure they will this weekend.
Are Treaty in danger? Apologies if I'm writing Sean Russell's team talk this week, but are Treaty in danger of now that they're out of the cup? Now they can't win the league, but they've kind of had a successful season. They'll end whatever nearly happens in the last 4 games. They'll end with a winning record this year, which is a big plus for them given the last 3 or 4 years. Are they in danger of falling off now and maybe just not competing in the last 4 games?
Yeah, I knew that was going to be a question. I hope not. As the answer. I hope not. But the problem is when you look at them last 4 games, the last 4 games are Shels, Peamount, Bohs, and Waterford. So they've 3 really, really difficult last 3 games. The other side of it is when they play the likes of Peamount will have nothing to play for. When they play Bohs at that stage, Bohs could be looking at it where Bohs are sort of half an eye in the cup final. It'll be 2 weeks before the cup final. It's an interesting one. I hope not.
The fact that they play Peamount and Bohs at home, does that give them a fighting chance?
Yes, absolutely. Like realistically, if they could come out batting 500 out of these last 4 games, win 2, lose 2, I think they'd be happy. But but the other side of it is if they come out with only maybe 1 win and then 4, I think that would be a question answered, and that would mean they really have tailed off. But I hope not, because it's been great to watch them this season.
Where do they go to from here? Obviously, changing the management structure, a new managing director to be appointed, advertised last week. Could we see that affect the resources available within the club?
I hope not. I also hope that Sean Russell's in that dugout next season, because I think Sean Russell deserves a good bit of credit for what he's done there. And like it's one of these that it's sort of a case of, and I don't want to say this, it's not trying to be a downplay things, but we've seen it before with clubs in this sort of similar position where they make that massive improvement and then the very next season they sort of fall back off a bit again. And I do have that little bit of a concern for Treaty. I hope it doesn't happen, because I think seeing a strong team in that sort of region is really important for the league, like it is with the likes of Sligo, with the likes of a Cork, because we've seen teams maybe have good runs and then die away, and it's not good for the league if it happens. So hopefully they can build on it and sort of be stronger again next year.
How important do you think retaining players of the caliber of Ficini, Robbins, goalkeeper I'm going to say Toomey, but I'm not 100% sure if that's how I pronounce his name.
Massive. Okay, it's massive. But the problem is I don't mean to be bad for Treaty. Every player, every League of Ireland club is 100% going to be on the phone to some of them players. And, can we tempt you? Can we do this? It's going to be difficult. It'll be interesting to see some of the players who have that loyalty towards Kieran McCormick. I think that could be a little bit of a helper for Treaty, but I think it's going to be difficult to keep hold of them all.
Yeah, I think you could be right, but I think that'll be the acid test for whether Treaty have really arrived or not. I think if they can even just win the hearts and minds of the local girls and stop the rot on the drift away from Limerick and the surrounding areas to other clubs in the region or close to them within an hour or two's drive, I think that in itself would be a huge success for the club. So here's hoping.
Even going back there is sort of a little bit of that winning of the hearts, because there's no doubt Gillian would have had options with a lot of League of Ireland clubs.
Yeah, 100%. In terms of that, then it's an exciting weekend. Let's talk Athlone before we wrap up, and I do want to talk a little bit about the FAI situations that we had at the top of the show. But Athlone on Wednesday night, can they pull it off? Can they keep? Can they even get a win just for coefficient purposes on the night?
It'll be difficult. It depends what way Glasgow go about it. If Glasgow go full strength, it's going to be very difficult for Athlone, especially considering, as I said earlier, like you're talking the core that 11 players who started that game are going to have to play 3 games in 7 days, and for a League of Ireland side, that's especially at that two games at that intensity, it's going to be very, very difficult. I think if Athlone put in a good performance and walk away where we say it's a good performance, no matter what the result, I think they can hold their head high. It's probably one of maybe 4 or 5 clubs in this Europa Cup, maybe that you definitely wanted to avoid when the draw was going to happen. But listen, it's going to be difficult. I do see Glasgow winning this game, unfortunately.
Do you think Colin Fortune's departure affected the performance on Wednesday night?
No.
I have to say, John Sullivan, he's loud. He's definitely loud on the sideline. He came across very clearly on the. I don't think he shut up for the 90 minutes. It was. You could hear every instruction on the sideline. I don't know whether it was down to the production or down to him just being more vocal than the average.
They had the big microphones literally right behind him.
Yeah, well, that one you could hear every single word he said on the sideline the other evening. Let's talk FAI for a minute. Over time, so we'll try and keep this short. We've already kind of touched on a lot of the controversy about not necessarily controversy about this, but we're seeing the FAI with a voluntary redundancy package available to staff at the moment. The uptake on that is mixed. We're hearing very positive overtures from David Carell and the FAI hierarchy about the uptake within the staff, but the people I've spoken to within the FAI say it's closer to about 5 or 10%, probably the lower end of that range, that have actually taken up this offer of voluntary redundancy, which isn't near the probably 30% that the FAI are looking for if they want to get parity. And the only figures we've got are that currently their budget 27% it goes on staff versus 17% in other federations. Now, everything's a bit vague when you're dealing with percentages, because you're talking about a percentage of turnover, and to compare yourself to organizations with much bigger turnovers that are qualifying for major competitions like we haven't been doing in recent years, it's a little bit misleading. Possibly. It's very hard unless you've got the full actual figures, but we did a little check earlier. We believe the FAI CEO is somewhere around the $250,000 mark in terms of a salary. Could be a little bit off with that, but somewhere around 200,000 if we're to be believed in terms of previous holders. John Delaney would have been up on 400,000 or 500,000 at certain points in the last decade. But from you checked the FA CEO was on 1.3 million last year.
1.3 after bonuses.
Roughly 900,000 of a core salary.
850. I think it was 850 core salary and then bonuses. Yeah. But the problem is there is in that situation. Like when you look at these sort of things, it's like to turn around and say the percentages. Like the difference with, like, you look at, say, for example, the Football League in England. The Football League pyramid in England probably takes in more money in terms of, say even the Conference League probably takes in more money in TV revenue where the FA get a share of it than, say, the League of Ireland. I
would imagine one club in the Championship turns over more money than the entire League of Ireland men's and women's combined, all 32 teams. So you're not comparing like with like, but I think it's not a bad idea to benchmark against other federations, but you need to. I would prefer to see a strategy rather than just a flat, well, this is what everybody else is doing, so we need to cut our cloth to match. I don't think that's right. I think there should be an analysis of every single member of staff and what they provide. And I think that network, which has been in operation for about 20 years, of the grassroots RDOs or whatever they're called now, they used to be RDOs, Regional Development Officers, they provide the actual hands on the ground across the country to enable the idea from Abbottstown to be magnified across every single club and every single league in the country. And I think without that grassroots core, you're going to struggle to provide, and I'm talking specifically about rural areas. Dublin will still be fine. People will show up and play and whatever, what have you. But when you look at right now, there's no designated officer for our county in Leitrim. We share one with Sligo, and there's other counties where you have one person across one or two counties, or maybe even three counties. That's just not good enough. And in terms of what that person can do in a limited area in a second county, it's spreading everything too thin. We used to have a system in the country where the county councils and the local sports partnerships used to contribute part of that salary. I think that's ultimately kind of died off. That was a thing that happened when Packy Bonner and Richard Fahey were running the technical department of the FAI. It was slightly smaller, but every county probably contributed half the salary. So all of a sudden, the money that was available in the FAI went a little bit further. That's been removed in a lot of places. And I think the personality of Packy Bonner was what made that happen. You wheel Packy out at different things. He's articulate, he's intelligent, he's passionate about the game in Ireland, and he brought the councils on board. Like it or lump it, that's how the Ireland works. You know, you see a big celebrity, you wheel him out. Delaney did it himself for a long time. Packy Bonner was the attraction. The councils wanted to have Packy at a photo shoot. They stumped up the money, they found the money, and it really benefited the game. Now we're seeing less and less of that, and I think that's a problem. I think people don't want to be attached to the FAI for a whole lot of reasons. We know what they are. We're not going to go into them here. But for me, it kind of stings to see this voluntary redundancy package on the table while you're appointing high profile and high managerial positions at much bigger salaries, I would imagine, than the grassroots folk on the ground.
So I don't mind them doing some of the appointments that they've done, because some of the appointments that they're trying to do, we know are needed.
Yeah,
we 100% we need. But the problem for me is that, and I say this when we speak about the FAI regularly, is the good people there, the people who are making a massive contribution. A lot of them good people are going to be the ones who are going to be impacted. It's not going to be a lot of them people who are maybe coasting through. Know that, okay, you know, good relationships in the FAI, I'm safe. But the problem where, if you're looking at the FAI and you're saying, okay, we need to reduce our costs, we need to look at this, we want to reduce this, we want this. What they should be doing, as I said there, it should be nearly a strategic value for money. What are we getting value out of? What do we need that's providing value? Is this position providing value? Is this position just a sort of another admin or another thing? Like, we know the football development officers and people like that are going to be the ones who are going to suffer. They're the ones who are going to suffer. They're the ones who are going to lose out, and they're the people who are out in the streets, or out in the, you know, the late night leagues, that helping keep people out the streets, coaching the kids in schools, helping get kids into the game. They're the ones that are going to suffer. Like when we look at, even, I was listening to a thing on Off the Ball earlier. I caught a clip on social media of Graham Gartland talking about Shamrock Rovers and how they've invested the money from the likes of the Gavin Bazuna sale into an indoor Astro, and they're talking about how they were able to get grants because they were looking at with Tallaght Stadium being in the private area, to get an Astro pitch around that area, to be able to provide for kids, be able to provide for the locals, but the people are there. But the problem is at the minute, we also see a lot of high profile, high value FAI jobs. And then we see the ones who are on the lower money who are doing the things. Like, there's some really top high up FAI people who are doing brilliant work. Like,
go on.
I was like, even last week, I was delighted to see Mark Scanlon representing the league over at the Athlone in Glasgow again. Having our League of Ireland director sort of travel to show a face of an actual league, get behind our teams. But the problem is there's a lot of people in the FAI who, they're just there because the money's too good and they're happy there. They're not going to go anywhere. And
the only person I'm aware of by name who's availed of this, and I know there's 4 or 5 according to my contact who he's aware of, but the one person I'm aware of by name who's taken it was on the verge of retirement. Was involved in programs that have been shaved back completely, virtually made redundant anyway. So it really suits him to step away and take a nice cash lump sum. He would have been probably gone from the organization in 2 or 3 years, 4 years anyway. So that's going to cost the organization money they probably didn't need to spend. He's been in there forever as well. So that's kind of the negative side of it. And I think there's going to be more of that than of good people who move on and choose to move on because it makes sense from a financial point of view. The quote from my contact in the FAI, and this is one of the grassroots staff, is I asked him, what's the mood like about new roles being advertised and appointed and the current situation for the grassroots staff? And the quote I got back was, morale on the floor. The statement saying staff don't have the skill set really set a tone. And that's in relation to a statement that came out at the end of August about the transformation program to modernize football. And the direct quote in that is the findings of a UEFA benchmarking report, which they've referenced all over the place. The findings make it clear that the association does not currently have the required framework and specific skill sets to implement vital strategies, including the FAI Football Pathways Plan, and to meet the evolving needs of Irish football at all levels of the game. And the belief between the staff is that they do have the skill sets, they're just not given the opportunity, the responsibility.
So if I'll say this: if they don't have the skill sets, if they don't, who's at fault for that? The people
100%.
who hire the people who hire the ones who don't have the skill set.
And the
That's who's
training
at.
and all of the if people don't have the skill set, you have people passionate about the game. Give them the skills, train them in this.
I use it. I use the saying in work all the time. I said, if you're someone who's got no will to do the job, I can't do anything for you. If you've loads of will but you don't have the skill, we can help you.
Yeah,
And that's the same thing. If the FAI have the right training pathways, have the right programs in place to help these sort of people, that's where it is. But so often people come into the FAI and it's sort of, you'll get someone that'll help you for a couple of days and it's away you go. And there's not everything is sort of just off you go. And the problem is the FAI then ends up losing so many good staff. They go abroad, they got jobs in the other places abroad where they go, and some of them don't even work in football anymore. And then you're sort of like, we had great people there, but we should point.
What's your thoughts on the latest scandal that hit the FAI last week? Emerged that a coach, an FAI staff member, has been suspended by the FAI pending an investigation into inappropriate contacts with the mothers and sisters of players on teams. Now, it doesn't go into details as to whether they're male or female. It doesn't really matter in the context of the offences that are alleged, but these offences are alleged to have occurred within their FAI role and also within their roles within clubs. It's not a great look for the FAI, given, okay, it's not with players directly, but
do you know what I'm going to say? Mark, I was wearing my hat right now, I'd take it off and I would salute Mark Toy. Because Mark Toy is constantly bringing these things to, like, these things coming to light, these things happening. The stuff about the Koigate show on telly as well. All these sort of things. To me, it's journalists doing their job. Incorporating all it is. But it just shows the FAI's house has never been in order. And it never will be in order the way things are going at the minute. The interesting thing is they're up in front of the Oireachtas committee soon, aren't they? On governance.
I don't know if it's fair.
Safety.
I don't know if it's fair to say that the FAI are responsible for the actions of one individual.
No, but the problem is
the FAI. But it was reported to the FAI and not adequately dealt with.
But that's the problem. That's the problem. That's safeguarding. Well, how many times are we having conversations over the last year or 2 years about safeguarding the FAI? And I'm going to say this to you now is, how many more scandals are there come out within the FAI, within football?
I'm aware of one in my time in football where something came to me. I wasn't the safeguarding officer. I passed it on to the person in charge, and I know it wasn't dealt with appropriately within the FAI structures, and it wasn't dealt with appropriately. And a period down the road, the particular individual, I had no contact in relation to that person or that person going forward, but that particular individual had to be removed from their role for reasons alluding to the original complaint that came in when they got the role, and that was disappointing. Just disappointing, really, and it shouldn't have happened. But yet, everybody who mishandled that is still in a position of authority at the same level within Irish football, and that's not acceptable.
But like we can even see here, I just done a quick Google search. I literally just searched FAI safeguarding, and like if you look here, like only go back as far as July, the 13th of July. Dan McDonnell and Mark Toy had an article in the Independent where they're talking about Sport Ireland. The sport minister is threatening to withhold funding from the FAI because of funding over safeguarding investigation delays. And at this stage, it was to do with sustained harassment and bullying in the Limerick Football League at that stage. That was the article. But the problem is there's so many things that we're hearing about safeguarding. We're hearing about these sort of things. And the question I would say is there half a dozen or a dozen probably stories that at some stage over the next couple of years could break? I wouldn't be surprised.
The question I would ask, and it's twofold. One is, the process we have is safeguarding at the moment. I would question the validity of safeguarding. If you've never been convicted of a crime, you don't flag on a safeguarding situation. So if someone's been inappropriate and hasn't been reported from years ago, it doesn't flag. So how secure is that? Is it really just a comfort blanket that we put around our clubs now to say, well, we ran him through safeguarding or ran her through safeguarding and it came back clean, so we did everything we could possibly do to protect the children in our care? And I get that you have to have some level of security around that. But the other side of it then is, when this happens, how many clubs, genuinely, what percentage of clubs in the country, and I'm including League of Ireland clubs in this, have every person who's potentially in contact with a child have their full safeguarding certification and current present tense eligibility to be involved with working with children? I would hazard a guess that the number of clubs that have 100% coverage at any given time is exceptionally low.
But the thing is, like, me and you should have to have that. Because if we're going to interview players who are potentially under the age of 18, we should have to have that.
Well, I did have it. I'm not sure if it's current.
You know what I mean? That sort of thing is like, no matter who it is across, like, and it should be a set the standard of.
You're going to get us banned from getting accreditations, Aaron. Stop talking. But no, you're right. Everybody involved in the game at all levels of the game, even people working in the stadium on match nights, if there's underage players involved or even underage members of the public involved, should have some level of security clearance. And safeguarding is what we have at the moment. Is it a perfect system? No, but it is what we've got at the moment. And I would argue that on a given basis, even with the club mark and everything, any club that's more than 12 or 24 months involved in club mark, I would argue that a lot of that certification has just been brushed under the carpet. Oh yeah, they did it once. Is it current? Probably not. But how do you fix it? If you're involved in the grassroots department in the FAI, how do you fix that?
That's $1 million question. That's $1 million question, and that's the sort of thing where, like, if we're seeing threats of sort of funding withdrawals and stuff like that, it's a matter that the FAI has to take extremely serious. And when they are up in front of the Oireachtas Committee, I think it's later this month. It is all about safeguarding, and it's all about that sort of stuff. I think that session will be a very interesting one to watch to see what comes out of it and what's sort of said in that relation.
When it comes to the voluntary redundancies and just redundancies in general within the FAI, I think they're doing it too late. I think when the proverbial SH1T was hitting the fan back at the end of the John Delaney era, and the money, we all knew the money was tight. I think that was the opportunity to take drastic steps, reduce the costs. We could have paid off maybe 10 million over the last couple of years and rebuilt from scratch. Personally, I would be in favor of scrapping everything and just starting greenfield site, rebuild the football structures in this country, and make them a bit more tight, make it harder to create a club, make it harder to create a league, have a focused structure to how football works, pyramid from under 8s right up to adult international competition, and have a proper pathway that isn't based on existing league structures or existing power dynamics within leagues. Make it provincial if you want, make it, because we all are based on that system in this country naturally when it comes to sport. Make it regional, make it provincial, and then have your leagues underneath. And to be honest, I'd even be quite happy to have a centralized administration of all the leagues. Like we see it in rugby, there's 4 different competition structures, one in each province. So you could have a provincial league. We've got the Leinster Senior, we've got the Munster Senior. We could have the Connacht or Connacht Ulster. Ulster have struggled to keep a league in the last few years. But we should have an intermediate structure in every province. This national league might replace that to some extent, but we need to see a pyramid where there's promotion and relegation, where you and I could set up a team if we want, as long as we've got club mark, we can get into a league. And then if we keep winning games, keep winning leagues, keep winning promotions, we could, in theory, work our way into the League of Ireland Premier Division. You need to hit certain milestones. You need to have certain financial obligations. You need to have certain stadium requirements as you progress through the leagues. But there should be a very clear guideline as to what those are, and people can aim towards that, because without it, I think the bottom of the first division in particular, and the bottom of the women's league probably a little bit too, gets very stagnant. Anyway, on that note, we're 25 minutes over time.
We can't finish, yeah.
Okay.
we have to talk a little bit about the role that had gone up and advertised this week. The head of women's football, the head of women's and girls football. Eileen Gleeson's.
Have you put in your application yet, Aaron?
No, I haven't. You'd be a better man than me to do that job.
No, I genuinely would love that job, but I don't think I have the right equipment for it, if that makes sense. As illegal as it is, I think a woman's getting that job. And I think that's just the way it's going to be. Every single women in sport role I've seen advertised in Europe in the last 5-6 years has been filled by a woman. I can't think of a single woman.
Could you see this role potentially going to someone external from soccer, in the sense of, because it's a lot of an admin role rather than an actual?
No, I don't think that's. I don't think that's going to work. I think we need somebody. I think, and I genuinely believe this. I've said it on the show many, many times. I believe this is the most important role for women's football in the country. And reading down through the job description, I think it's, I did have it there in front of me, but it's not there now. I do think it's the most important job to make sure that women's football is a success in this country. More important than the international women's manager. They get all the profile, they get all the kudos, and they get all the pressure publicly. But I think the women's football role is huge. And I'm a bit disappointed to see that the only requirement is to have a B license and potentially an A license or a pro license. I think we need someone who doesn't want to be a coach in this role. The license is good and it's a good base, but I think that should be this, or a qualification in a management background, or a qualification in or 5 or 10 years experience in a sporting organization in a managerial role. I think it shouldn't be focused on that. And I don't know if I can get that right, but I think I saw that somewhere in terms of the essential requirements. Yeah, UEFA B license required as a minimum, with preference for candidates holding a UEFA A or pro license. That's the wrong approach. I think we need someone who's more familiar with grassroots football than the elite stuff. The elite stuff will take care of itself. The budgets are there.
So,
the profile is there.
Reading this here, right? Deep understanding of Irish football landscape. So that means they can't go abroad, because you're not going to get someone abroad who has unless they're someone with a massive Irish background, who's going to have a that sort of thing. Like, and
there's one name that springs to mind when I see this, if I'm honest. And you've mentioned her at the top of the show in relation to another role. And I think someone who's been part of the World Cup success in recent years is potentially my favorite to get this job. She's been involved in the PFAI as a leading light for women's football. She's been involved in every level of Irish football.
Anya Gorman.
Yeah, I think she's the number one candidate in my opinion. Is she very young for it? Absolutely. Does she have the relevant experience? I'd argue she possibly does. She's very intelligent. She's very clued in. She's very passionate about women's sport. But maybe it's a little early for her in her career.
But then again, look at someone like Nora Stapleton, sort of in with Sport Ireland.
Yep.
Hadn't long finished her career.
Yep.
Gets involved, and it's now one of the key stakeholders within Sport Ireland.
Yeah, she's the head of women's sport, women in sport in the whole country.
Considering she come winner in there
winner of an FAI Cup, I might add, as well, back with UCD back in the day. So she knows her way around a soccer pitch as well. But she's not gonna leave her role to step down.
What I'm saying is, like, she's somebody who's sort of come into that sort of environment after not long after a sporting career, sort of come towards the back end. So that's sort of an endorsement of what you're saying in relation to someone like an Anya Gorman.
Like, don't get me wrong, I'd love this job. But would I even bother applying for it? Probably not. First of all, I don't think the FAI would take me. Second of all, I don't know if they'd hire a man. And that sounds probably borderline illegal, but they do say they're equal opportunities employer. But I think for a whole load of reasons, it's so much better for this to be a woman that gets the job.
Friday week is the deadline.
But, like, can you think of somebody, like you said, that key line of not a deep understanding of the Irish football landscape? Like, Anya's been involved as a player. She's been involved from the administration side.
Give it a James O'Callaghan.
Yeah, but, like, again,
he wouldn't take it. But it's a sort of, you know, it's like, the problem is there. It's like, for me, I don't care who gets it. I couldn't care who gets it, as long as they've got a passion for women's football. They know the game. and they're going to work hard to help and grow the women's game. That's all I want to see, is someone coming in who has a deep passion for the game, wants to grow it, wants to push it on to the next level. Because whoever it is, we'll turn around and give that back. We'll turn around and give, and try and push the things as much as we can. But the problem with me is, cannot see another strategic plan coming out of the FAI where it's all buzzwords and hit this, and this without any figures or any of that sort of stuff, because that doesn't do the women's game any justice. And I think whatever they do for the FAI, and you're right, I think you're spot on what you say, is this role for me is more important than a women's national team manager, because we can always get a women's national team manager. This is a permanent position. It's not a temporary contract. It's not a 2-year contract. It's a permanent position, and it's somebody who has an opportunity to make a massive impact on women's football.
Yeah, 100%. I love to see. I think Anya would be great. There's another couple of players floating around. I know Niamh Fahey. I did spot a social media post from her looking for a role. Although she's a UK based now, would she come home for a role like this? Would she have any interest in a role like this? Who knows? But there's plenty of players with international experience who've been there, done it at a local level, have got better experience at a national level in other countries as players. Do I think it has to be a player? No. Do I think it has to be someone who's played for Ireland? Absolutely not. In fact, it might be a better actual fit if it's someone who hasn't. But there are a few players out there. I'm worried about setting a precedence and a preference for UEFA and pro license coaches, because this isn't a coaching role. And I think bringing people in, we've made that mistake before. Eileen Gleeson got tempted by the senior manager's job. I don't think she should have. She did at the time, never worked out for her or the FAI since. And I would argue,
job for life.
And I think she would have been phenomenal at it. I've said that on the record as well. And I think the last, Hannah Dingley, I think also had a coaching background at a high level in the men's game.
Interestingly, just on Hannah Dingley, on this, what you've said here, is I do not want to see the next head of women's and girls football on the training pitch with the Irish women's national team. Because even Hannah Dingley was on the training pitch at times. There were times where she sat in front of me in Greece with the analysis, and she was feeding information. They were feeding information down on a microphone to the sideline. To me, if you're the head of women's girls football, if you're on that trip, you're there match day, you're with the delegates, you're there sort of making contacts, making these sort of things. You're not on the training pitch. And that's where, for me, the concern is around that UEFA B, is around, is it a coaching badge? Is it just, are they going to try and pull it that it's more coaching when it's not coaching? It needs to be all that off the field stuff. It needs to be all that stuff that's going to help women's football in this country go to where we're having conversations down the line of about, can we get 2 teams into the Champions League, not 1 team into the Europa Cup and 1 team into the Champions League? Can that? And this is where these sort of things will help.
I would argue a bigger, and we're way over time, I'm forgetting about the clock at this stage, but I would argue that this person's remit should be more about reducing the distance of your local women's soccer team from every child in the country, so that every child in the country can get to a women's soccer team and a competitive league in their locality with less than a maybe 30 to 40 minute drive for real rural Ireland. But we should have a decent league, and I mean a decent league with 5 to 6 teams minimum. Ideally, like you look at Sligo, Leitrim, they've jumped in at 12 or 14 teams and they've kept that for the first 3 seasons. That's huge for me. That's a success story from the World Cup. They're the kind of success stories we need to have. You see other counties with 4, 5 or 6 teams. We need to be growing on that. We need to be doubling those numbers. And that's the real key to this job. If we get the grassroots big enough, you will get the talent in, and everything else kind of takes care of itself. So you need to facilitate clubs having women's teams, the capacity to encourage women's teams. You need to have a pathway that girls can see for the talented players into the League of Ireland, for the super talented players through to senior teams, for the less than super talented at under 19 to come back to play junior football in a solid league, so that they have the option, like boys do, to go into the intermediate grade or the top junior grades around the country and play at a really high level back at their own level. And I think that's the problem. And I think maybe there's a bit of a power grab in the game, and we see it probably in Cork, where the best players don't necessarily make themselves available for the League of Ireland side. They're playing junior football in Cork. They're not challenging themselves. But we need to make sure that we have enough players coming through the pipeline from under single digits, under 8, under 9, under 10, right through the system, that we can allow the cream of the crop to go into the League of Ireland structures, a handful go to England or to other countries, but that the vast majority, after they've had that really good period from maybe 15 to 19 playing in the League of Ireland underage academies, if they don't make the grade, which, let's be honest, 80% are not going to make the grade, 80% plus, they then drift back into the local league, but actually a plan for that. And that to me is, if we can get the grassroots right, I think the international stuff takes care of itself.
Yeah, 100%. I think this role is the biggest cog between this role. It's the link between the grassroots and the League of Ireland department. It's that intermediate for women's sport, and like even like we see with the likes of them transition year courses, that Fingal run. You talked about earlier about development officers on county councils and on counties paying for stuff. That should be something that's available in more than just Dublin. Likewise, we shouldn't be seeing the likes of the Dublins, the big counties where they're always winning the Gainer Cup. They're always winning this. The more counties to win it, the more players that we see progress to them or their smaller leagues, the better. The more the growth we have of the women's game. So hopefully, the next candidate, is
like 20 years ago, we had 4 development officers and a women's manager. Sue Ronan would have been the head of that thing at the time, and I'm trying to remember who the 4 of them were. Emma Martin was definitely one. Owen Kalaki was another one. Etna Leiden down in Cork was a third, and there was a girl in Donegal that I can't remember her name. But those 4 would have been, as well as the regional development officers, they sat across provinces. And so their job was to make sure that programs were being run out for women's football in conjunction with whoever was in that specific county. And it worked really well at the time, at least from the outside looking in. There was visibility. Those roles have gone, and they've been just subsumed into the RDO's roles. And I think we need to start seeing the building out of specific women's development officers across and again, it can be regionally based, but you look at the numbers who are playing junior football across the country, you look at the numbers who are playing in juvenile football across the country, and it's growing, and we need to harness that. And that's the key. Hire somebody really good to look after the international teams, plural. Let them do their job. Don't sit on their shoulder and micromanage. Let them get on with it and worry about supporting the leagues, supporting the grassroots clubs. Everything else will take care of itself.
Like I have a friend whose young daughter's playing. Friends are playing. Their young daughter's playing for Newbridgetown. I'd love to be able to see players like that, young players, know that there's a pathway the whole way through for a club like that to the League of Ireland. And to me, that would be massive.
Yeah, and every club in the League of Ireland within 5 years should have under 17, under 19, and potentially a second tier women's football team. It should be a prerequisite to get into the League of Ireland. You should have to have a women's outfit. I'm a firm believer that should be the case. Will it create an overcrowding potentially in Dublin of teams? Yeah, but I don't care. Those opportunities should be given, even if they're in like St. Pat's are currently in, I think they're still in not the DWSL, the EWFL. I don't know if they're still in that at the moment.
They're in the 19. They're in the 19s, aren't they?
Yeah, they're in the 19s and the 17s, but they used to have a senior side. I don't think they're in that league anymore.
Didn't what do you call it play for them when they were in that sort of league? Mary Crow, who's a sports journalist for us, she played for them.
Yeah, potentially. But I don't know. I just think there's so much more to this role, and this should be the pinnacle. This is the top job in women's football in the country, in my opinion. And we need to find the right person, and that's key. And I think this is possibly, from a women's football point of view, this potentially is the important job. We saw, let's call it what it was, the absolute ridiculous strategic plan for women's football. It was like you'd put it into ChatGPT and said, not only write the strategy, can you design it for me as well?
It was nearly just a shut me and you up. That's what it nearly feels like. Because I said for so many weeks and before, I was like, strategic this, and then all of a sudden the email comes in and like...
Yeah. It looked like it was put together in 15 minutes with the help of ChatGPT, and it was terrible. And I think as part of the new strategic plan for the FAI, when that comes out, I think it's due in the next 12 months, it needs to be a huge part of that, because women are 50% of the game if it's done right. It's the huge
Do you
growth
remember
opportunity.
the Irish rugby? You
Oh,
showed me the Irish rugby one. It's unbelievable.
phenomenal. And I think the right member of staff should be able to deliver that to that standard. Maybe help with the layout and the graphics and all that stuff, but should be able to deliver that quality of production within doing their job. That should be the first 6 months of their job, is actually developing the strategy for where women's football is going in this country. Will that be the case? I hope with what I'm seeing out of the FAI, I have a lot of respect for what John Martin did at Shamrock Rovers. I have even more respect for what Shane Robinson has done over the last 20 years, both as a player and within the academy at Shamrock Rovers. Mark Scanlon has probably been the best appointment the FAI have made in the last decade. If not 2 decades, in terms of the upswing in the League of Ireland. And I think the FAI / League of Ireland and / Mark Scanlon and his team, not saying he's doing it solo, he does have a really good team around him. I think that's key. And they've done phenomenal work as far as I'm concerned, in terms of
100%.
the quality of the highlights packages, the speed they get those highlight packages out on a Saturday afternoon or Friday night is phenomenal. And it's and even live cutting on the day, that's a huge undertaking. I don't think we appreciate how big that actually is, because we see it in the Premier League in England. But to get that out at the speed and the quality that they do is huge. And the priority that's been given, I height the respect for everything the League of Ireland are doing. I think they've made really good strides. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. But like, if you're asking me for a grade in the last 3 or 4 years since Mark took over in the League of Ireland, you're probably looking at a B+ or an A-, which is considerably higher than what happened in recent years. And I think
100%.
that the success story, forget the problem child, they're like they're on the wall now when you walk into Abbottstown. Do you know what I mean? They're leading the way in terms of what's going on within the football in Ireland. I think it's really, really positive. Anyway, like, forget time. We've done next week's episode as well at this stage. Aaron, as always, I've been on a rant for the last hour, so apologies to anyone who's actually listened to us this long. And if you haven't enjoyed it, we'd love for you to stick around, come back every week. We're here most weeks on a Wednesday, but just because of fixtures for the last few weeks, we've kind of moved to the Monday. Let us know if you like it on the Monday. It's earlier in the week. It's closer to the games. We'd be quite happy to, because we're flexible. We just do it when we're available. We could both do Mondays. So if you have any particular preference, if you're still listening to us nearly 2 hours later, we promise we'll try and get it back to the hour. We haven't been great at that in the last few weeks, but we'll do our best to get it back to under the hour and get back to a kind of a reasonable time. But Aaron, as ever, some exciting games ahead. Talking about football, where are you going for this weekend?
I don't know yet. I think I'd probably have to go to 3D again, Shels 3D again. I think that's probably the one that'll catch my eye on Saturday.
Yeah, well, listen, I'll probably be watching from my desk here as I'm at work. But listen, thanks for joining us. If you've stuck around this long, apologies for the rants for the last 40 or 50 minutes or so. We will be back next week with another episode 30 of the podcast. And of course, you can catch up with everything Women's League of Ireland related on finalwhistle.ie. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back again next week. Talk to you then.